She knelt on the wooden boardwalk, knees pressed into dust and splinters, her hands gripping the edge of a boot-black kit that had seen better days. "Please, just one coin," she said, voice small but steady as she looked up at the man leaning against the post outside the saloon. His eyes shifted away, pretending not to hear. His spurs clinked as he walked off. Clara didn't flinch. She just looked down, took a breath, and wiped at the worn black leather of a boot that no one had asked her to shine. Her fingers were raw from days of this. Not from the polish, but from the cold mornings and skipped meals. She was 12. Small for her age, all bone and grit now. Her face had lost the softness it once held. Dirt smudged her cheeks, and her light brown hair was tied back with a strip of frayed fabric. Behind her, curled against the brick wall in a bundle of patched blanket, her baby sister Ruthie slept. Or maybe she was just pretending. Ruthie was 5 and had gotten too quiet lately. Too weak. Clara knew the difference between real sleep and the still kind of sleep that came when the stomach stopped aching because it gave up. That was why she had to keep trying. Keep asking. Keep begging if she had to. Their town wasn't much, just a stop on the trail with a single street, a few buildings with their names painted above them in peeling white letters. Dust blew through it like it belonged more than any of them did. Men came and went, some rough, some kind, most just tired. They rarely looked down. Clara had learned how invisible a hungry child could be when everyone else was trying to forget their own troubles. Their mother had been buried 5 weeks ago, behind the church. Clara didn't cry anymore. She hadn't had time. Sickness took her fast, and the preacher said it was the Lord's will, but Clara didn't believe that. What kind of Lord took a mother and left her babies cold? The townspeople said they'd try to help, but everyone was hanging on by a thread these days. A few women had given her some bread. The doctor gave her a bottle of old milk once. But no one had room. No one had answers. Her father? He had walked out a long time ago. Clara barely remembered him. Just the sound of boots on floorboards and her mama's voice saying, "Don't wake the girls." That was before he disappeared into a bottle and then the world. Clara knew how to hide, how to blend in. But now she needed to be seen. She needed that coin. She told people it was to buy polish, rags, anything that made her sound like she was working. But today, for the first time, she told the truth. "It's for my baby sister," she whispered to the next man who passed. "She hasn't eaten since yesterday morning." He looked at her, really looked, and for a second, she saw something in his eyes. But he kept walking. She didn't blame him. By noon, the sun was bright and hot. Ruthie stirred behind her, coughing that dry kind of cough that came from breathing in dust and having nothing in your belly. Clara turned quickly and gave her a sip of water from the glass bottle someone had tossed to them the night before. It had rolled to her feet like a gift. Ruthie drank, then leaned against her big sister's chest and closed her eyes again. Clara stroked her hair and told her a lie. "I'll get us something soon. Maybe stew, with bread on the side." Ruthie nodded, too tired to ask more. The sound of horses and shouting caught Clara's attention. She looked up just as a man on horseback pulled up fast in front of the general store. Dust flew everywhere, and the horse's hooves hit hard. The man shouted for someone inside, then tossed down a small sack and rode off. Clara watched him go. Her heart beat a little faster. She wasn't thinking anything bad. Just, he had dropped a sack. She looked at Ruthie, then at the sack, then back at Ruthie. No one seemed to be watching. The storekeeper hadn't come out. Maybe he hadn't seen it. Clara stood slowly, her knees shaky, and walked to where the sack had landed. It was tied shut, light, not coins. She picked it up and backed away, hiding it under her coat. She hurried behind the alley behind the saloon and opened it. Dried beans, a few strips of jerky, and 2 apples, bruised but sweet-smelling. She gasped. Food. Real food. She didn't ask where it came from. She didn't question if it was meant for someone else. She ran back to Ruthie, shaking the blanket gently. Ruthie's eyes opened and blinked. Clara smiled, wide and shaking. "Look what I got," she said softly. "Eat slow, okay?" Ruthie took the apple in both hands, holding it like it was gold. She bit into it and closed her eyes. Clara watched her, wiping a tear from her own face before Ruthie could see. Later that night, Clara sat with her back to the wall, Ruthie curled against her. The town had quieted. She saw a light still burning in the sheriff's office. She wondered what would happen if she went in. Would he take them in or send them away? She didn't know. She remembered something her mama once said. "We don't wait for people to save us, Clara. We do what we have to." So that's what she did. She started showing up earlier each day. She cleaned boots for real when someone let her. And when they didn't, she still asked. One coin at a time, she saved what she could. Every night, she counted them in her palm, whispered them out loud to Ruthie, like it was a story. 3 today. We're almost there. Almost where? Ruthie asked one night. Somewhere warm, Clara whispered. Will they let us stay? Will you get bread every day and no one asks why you're alone? She didn't know if that place existed, but she had to believe it did. One day, when she was kneeling like always, a voice broke through her begging. Who taught you to shine boots like that? Clara looked up fast. A man stood there, older but not old. Clean clothes. Not the usual trail dust and whiskey smell. My mama, she said. He watched her a moment. And where's she now? Clara didn't answer. She just kept rubbing the leather. The man crouched. You got a place to sleep? She glanced toward the alley. We're fine. He followed her gaze. His eyes narrowed, then softened. He reached into his coat and pulled out a coin. You eat first, then we talk. She took the coin like it was breakable. Thank you, she whispered. Clara ran back to Ruthie, clutching the coin so tight it left a mark on her palm. That night, they shared warm soup for the first time in weeks. But Clara didn't sleep. She lay awake, thinking about the man, wondering what kind of man asks questions no one else wants to hear, wondering if he was going to help or take something too, because in Clara's world, help usually came with a cost. Clara woke early the next morning, before the sun reached the top of the hills. She slipped out from under the threadbare blanket, careful not to wake Ruthie, and went to the water trough behind the livery stable. She washed her hands and face quickly, rubbing away the grime with the corner of her sleeve. The cold bit her skin, but it helped wake her up. They had survived another night. That alone was a quiet victory. She walked back to the alley where Ruthie still slept and stood there for a moment, watching her little sister's chest rise and fall. Ruthie clutched a scrap of the apple core from the day before like it was a treasure. Clara's chest tightened. She couldn't keep living like this. Ruthie was getting smaller every week. Her arms thinner, her voice weaker. Clara remembered time before all this, before their mother started coughing blood into a rag. Their home had been a small one-room shack on the edge of the dry creek, but it had walls that held out the wind and a roof that didn't leak. Her mama had laughed sometimes, sang lullabies at night, even braided Clara's hair when she had the energy. Their mother had done her best. She scrubbed other people's laundry until her hands bled, told stories in the dark to make Ruthie giggle, and kept their shoes patched even when there was no more leather left to cut. When she died, it had happened so fast Clara didn't get to say goodbye. One day her mother could stand, the next day she couldn't. And the town, already worn thin, had no space for 2 more mouths. So Clara had taken Ruthie and everything they owned, 2 blankets, 3 spoons, and a cracked bowl, and they started sleeping behind the saloon. Every day since had been about survival. Now, something in her had started to shift. Maybe it was that man with the coin. Maybe it was how he'd looked at her. Not like a nuisance or a burden, but like a person. He hadn't said much, but stayed with her. People who asked questions usually wanted something, but he hadn't asked for anything yet. His name was Sam. She learned later that week. He ran a small leather repair shop near the end of the street. Not many people noticed it unless they tore a saddle strap or needed new stirrups. He'd been in town for only a year, kept to himself mostly. Some whispered he'd been in the war and come back quiet, but Clara didn't listen to stories. She judged people by what they did, not what others said. Sam started waving to her every morning. Then he left a wrapped roll on the barrel by his door. Clara saw it the first time by accident. She was just walking past, and there it was. Bread, warm and soft. She didn't take it at first. It felt like stealing. But the next day, it was there again. Then again. No note. Just waiting. One morning, she worked up the courage to knock on his door. He opened it slow. His shirt was rolled at the sleeves, hand stained with dye and oil. His eyes were tired, but not cruel. "That bread," she said. "What?" He shrugged. It looked like someone needed it. She studied his face. "Are you going to ask me to work it off? Do you want to?" She blinked. "Doing what?" He stepped aside and let her peek in. His shop was cluttered with tools, straps, wooden forms, scraps of hide. The smell of it, earthy, worn leather and warm oil, wrapped around her. "I could teach you to stitch," he said, "if you want." Clara nodded, slowly. "Only if it's real work." He gave a short nod. "Real as it gets." That's how it started. She came by for 2 hours each day when Ruthie was sleeping. Sam taught her to thread needles and punch holes, to pull the seams tight and smooth. She was quick, careful. He didn't speak much, which suited her. Silence was easier than trust. Still, there was something steady about him, like an old tree rooted deep in a dry land. Not showy, not grand, but not moving either. Meanwhile, she still begged, still cleaned boots, still guarded Ruthie like a wolf. Because there were people in town who noticed girls without parents. Not all of them kind. One of them was Mr. Lyle. He ran a freight depot on the edge of town and had a long scar on his cheek from a fight no one dared ask about. He didn't like children, especially not poor ones. He'd caught Clara once, months back, digging through the barrel behind the mercantile and yanked her out by the collar. He hadn't hit her, but his grip left bruises, and the way he looked at her, it made her stomach twist. Now, she caught him watching them sometimes. Ruthie sitting out front while Clara shined boots. Well, didn't smile, didn't talk. Just watched. Clara made sure to keep distance, to change streets when he lingered too long. But fear kept settling deeper in her gut, like a stone she couldn't move. One night, Clara sat beside Ruthie as the wind picked up and cold crept in. Ruthie was shivering hard, and Clara wrapped their blanket tighter. Her arms were sore from stitching, but she hadn't told Ruthie she was working. She didn't want her sister to feel left behind, or worry. "Do you think Mama can see us?" Ruthie whispered. Clara hesitated, then nodded. "She watches every night." Ruthie smiled faintly and snuggled closer. Clara swallowed the lump in her throat and looked up at the sky, dotted with stars. She wanted to believe it too, but it was getting harder to hold on to anything lately. The next day, Sam handed her a pair of stitched gloves, small, made from scraps. "For Ruthie," he said. "They're not perfect, but they'll help." Clara took them gently. "She'll love them." Sam paused. "You ever think about leaving town?" Clara frowned. "Leave where? We don't even belong here." He nodded, like he understood something she hadn't said. "I know a place down south," he said. "Farm town. Kind people. They got a schoolhouse. Even a widow who lets kids sleep in her barn when times are hard." Clara looked down at the gloves. "Sounds like a story." "Maybe," he said. "But some stories are real. Just hard to find." She didn't answer, but she carried that idea with her the rest of the day. Things were getting colder. Nights bit harder. Ruthie's cough had come back, and Clara felt the panic rising. The food she'd been saving was nearly gone. The coins came slower when the weather turned. People kept their heads down, boots muddy and unloved. Then one afternoon, while Clara was working in Sam's shop, a voice snapped from the door. "That her?" She turned fast. Mr. Lal stood in the frame, arms crossed, looking straight at her. "What do you want?" Sam asked, his voice low and even. "Just saying," Lal replied. "Not a good idea to take in strays. Makes people talk." "She's not a stray," Sam said, without looking at Clara. Lal chuckled. "You sure about that?" He spat near the doorway and walked off. Clara's hands were shaking, but she tried not to show it. Sam didn't say anything else. He just handed her another strap and nodded toward the stool. She sat, but inside her thoughts ran wild. He knew. Lyle knew she was alone. And if he told someone, if the wrong people found out, someone could come and take Ruthie. Put her in a place where Clara couldn't reach her. Or worse, she didn't sleep that night. Just held Ruthie tight and watched the alley entrance like a hawk. The hope she'd started to feel was still there. But now it came with something else. Tension, danger, and a quiet, growing fire in her gut. She'd come too far to lose Ruthie now. And if anyone tried, Claire would stop them, no matter what it cost. The next week brought the kind of cold that turned bone into glass. The sky stayed gray, wind scraping through the alleyways like knives. Clara woke one morning to find frost clinging to Ruthie's blanket. Her sister was curled in a tight ball, cheeks pale, lips dry. Clara pressed her own coat around Ruthie's shoulders, even though it was thin and ripped at the sleeves. She didn't care about being cold anymore. Not when Ruthie's breathing sounded faint and cracked. "You stay here today," she whispered, brushing Ruthie's hair away from her face. "I'll bring food. I promise." Ruthie blinked, too tired to argue. Clara stood up, body aching, fingers stiff, and walked toward the main street like she had a purpose, like she wasn't about to fall apart. At Sam's shop, she worked in silence. Her hands were red, knuckles raw, but she stitched with the care of someone doing surgery. Sam handed her a cup of tea halfway through and said nothing when she wrapped her hands around it like it was life itself. "You're not sleeping," he said eventually. Clara looked away. "I'm fine." He let the lies sit between them. Then he walked to the back room and came out with a thin wool blanket. "Take it." She stared at it. "I'll bring it back." "Don't care if you do." Her voice cracked. "Why are you helping me?" Sam leaned against the doorway, arms folded. His jaw worked before he spoke. "Because someone helped me once, when I didn't deserve it." She didn't ask what happened. She could see in the way he looked out the window, eyes far away, haunted. Whatever it was, it had left him scarred inside. Same way she felt lately, like the world had burned something out of her, and now she was just trying to keep one good thing from slipping through her fingers. Sam didn't push. He never did. And that made her trust him more than anyone else ever had. Claire started spending more time in the shop, not always working, sometimes just sitting, drinking tea, warming her hands by the small stove while Sam fixed bridles or mended saddlebags. She asked questions. How leather was tanned, why stitching had to go a certain way. He answered without over-explaining. He treated her like she could handle the truth. It made her feel seen, not pitted. One afternoon, while Ruthie napped wrapped in the new blanket, Clara wandered into the small church down the street. It was empty, smelled of wax and wood. She sat in the back, folding her hands in her lap like her mama used to. "I don't know if you're listening," she whispered, staring at the floorboards. "But I need help. Ruthie needs help. I ain't asking for a miracle. Just a chance. Please." She didn't cry. She couldn't. But something cracked deep inside her that day. Something old and stubborn. She left the church with a strange lightness. Like maybe someone had hurt her after all. Things got better for a little while. The sheriff, a square-faced man named Tate, started nodding to Clara when he passed her. Once, he gave her a half loaf of bread and said his wife had baked too much. Clara knew it was a lie, but she smiled and said thank you. She caught Lyle watching her less. Or maybe he just got bored. Either way, she felt safer. One day, Sam gave her a pair of secondhand boots, sturdy and too big, but they kept her toes warm. Clara tried to say thank you, but the words stuck in her throat. So she just nodded and hugged the box to her chest like it was treasure. She walked straighter that day, taller. Even Ruthie seemed stronger. She started drawing with a stub of charcoal on the back of scrap paper Sam gave her. Little houses, stick figures holding hands. "She drew me a picture," Clara said to Sam, smiling faintly. "Said it's our house when we get one." He looked at the drawing and said, "Might not be far off, but hope always came with a shadow." One night, Clara returned to the alley and found Ruthie shivering hard, her skin burning hot. Her lips were cracked, and she couldn't sit up. Clara panicked. She wrapped her sister in both blankets and ran to the back of the saloon, where she knew the cook sometimes threw out scraps. "Please," She whispered to the kitchen boy standing by the barrel. My sister's sick. I need something, anything hot. He looked at her like he wanted to help, then turned and came back with a tin of broth. Don't tell nobody. Clara ran back and spooned the broth into Ruthie's mouth slowly. Her hand shook. Her stomach was hollow, but she didn't care. That night, she didn't sleep. She stayed up watching Ruthie's breathing, listening, praying. By morning, she knew she had to do something more. She went to Sam and told him the truth. Ruthie's sick. Bad. I think it's her lungs. He didn't ask how long. He didn't scold her for waiting. He just grabbed his coat and said, "Show me." They walked fast. Sam knelt beside Ruthie and placed a hand on her forehead. Then he stood up, jaw tight. She needs a doctor. Clara's eyes widened. We can't pay. I'll handle it. No, I said I'll handle it. Clara had never seen him so firm. She nodded silent. Sam brought the doctor before the hour was over. Old man Riggins, who usually only visited the homes of those who could afford him. He examined Ruthie quietly, then turned to Clara. She's got the fever bad. Lungs are full of it, but it ain't too late. He pulled a bottle from his bag. This will help. Keep her warm. Get broth in her every few hours. Clara nodded, her chest so tight she couldn't speak. Sam walked the doctor back out, said nothing about the cost. Clara knew he'd paid for it. She wanted to say thank you, but her throat burned too much. Instead, she stayed by Ruthie's side, giving her medicine, whispering stories, holding her hand through the night. 3 days passed before Ruthie's color started to come back. And when she finally opened her eyes and smiled weakly, Clara broke. She leaned forward and cried into her sister's shoulder, silent, shaking sobs that didn't stop for minutes. Ruthie reached up and brushed her cheek. You okay? Clara laughed softly. I am now. After that, something changed. Clara started dreaming again. She dreamed about warm porches in a room with 2 beds, a garden, a school bell ringing. She told Sam, there's a place south, like you said. She murmured, wiping dust from a saddle strap. What's it called? He looked up from his work. Clearwater, town near a river. You ever been there? He nodded. Before I came here. Thought about going back. You'd really leave? He looked at her for a long time. Not alone. Clara felt her cheeks warm. She looked back at her hands. You think we'd make it? He nodded again. I do. The law was still out there. One morning, Clara found a boot scuffed with mud outside Sam's shop, like someone had been waiting or watching. She brushed it off as nothing, but her gut said otherwise. 2 days later, the sheriff stopped her on the street. Clara, he said gently, I need to ask something. She froze. What? Someone told me your sister's been sick, that you've been sleeping in alleys. She didn't speak. I'm not looking to take her, he said, but I need to know if you're safe. She stared at him. Is Lal saying things? The sheriff hesitated. Just rumors. People talking. Clara wanted to scream. She wanted to grab Ruthie and run. Instead, she said, we're leaving soon. Where? South. To Clearwater. The sheriff looked surprised, but he nodded. You trust the man who's helping you? Clara didn't even blink. I do. Then go soon, he said, before someone makes trouble that you can't undo. Clara nodded. That night, she told Sam, it's time. He didn't ask for details. He just packed his bag, gave her one of his old coats, and said they'd leave by morning. But Clara sat awake again, her arms around Ruthie, watching the dark. Because leaving wasn't just about going somewhere new. It was about letting go of the fear, of the hurt, of the part of her that had learned to never trust anyone. And that was the hardest part of all. They were supposed to leave at dawn. Sam had gotten a borrowed wagon from the stable boy he'd once stitched boots for. Clara had packed their things the night before. 2 blankets, Ruthie's drawings, the gloves Sam made, the little coin pouch with everything they'd saved. She'd wrapped the medicine bottle in cloth and tucked it close to Ruthie's chest as they slept. That morning, the sky was pale with frost, and everything felt sharp, too quiet, too still. Clara stood with Ruthie bundled in her arms at the back of Sam's shop while Sam secured the reins. She looked over her shoulder at the town, the street empty and slick with dew. And that's when Lyle stepped out of the sheriff's office. He hadn't seen them yet. He was just talking with the sheriff, his voice low but angry, pointing towards Sam's place. The sheriff looked tense. Then he met Clara's eyes across the street. She saw his jaw tighten. Lyle turned. He saw them. His face twisted. He started walking toward them, and something in Clara snapped. "Sam, go," she shouted. "Now!" He looked up, saw the panic, saw Lyle, and without a word, jumped up onto the wagon seat and reached down for her. Clara handed Ruthie up first, then climbed in fast. Sam cracked the reins. The wagon jolted forward. Lyle yelled something, started running. The sheriff grabbed his arm, trying to hold him back. They didn't look back after that. The wagon hit the dirt trail leading out of town, wheels rattling over frozen ground. Clara held Ruthie tight, her body shaking not from cold now, but from fear. "What do you want?" Sam asked over the wind. "I don't know," Clara said, but I saw it in his face. He wasn't going to let us leave. She didn't say what she truly feared, that Lyle had gone to the sheriff to make trouble. Maybe say Clara had stolen something, maybe worse. And if they'd waited even one more hour, Ruthie would have ended up in someone else's hands. But they were out now. They were gone. And yet, Clara couldn't stop trembling. The first 2 days on the trail brought a strange kind of peace. The sky was wide. Ruthie smiled more. Sam told them which plants were safe to touch, when to stay quiet, and how to read weather from the clouds. But on the third day, the storm came. Dark clouds rolled across the plains in the early afternoon, and the wind whipped harder. Sam pulled the wagon under the cover of a line of trees, set up what shelter he could with canvas and rope. Clara huddled with Ruthie under the blankets, but the rain pounded and the cold crept into their bones. That night, Ruthie started coughing again. Not just little dry coughs, but hard, rattling ones that bent her in half. Her chest heaved. She couldn't keep anything down. Sam built a fire, boiling water, laying hot cloths across Ruthie's chest. Clara sat beside her, holding her hand, whispering, "You're okay, you're okay," over and over again. But Ruthie didn't respond. Clara's mind raced. "The medicine, there's still some left, right?" She reached for her satchel, fingers fumbling. Opened it. Searched. It wasn't there. She turned the whole bag out into the dirt. Coins. Gloves. Nothing else. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." She tore through the blanket folds, every pocket, everything. But the bottle was gone. It must have fallen during the wagon ride. Or maybe she'd left in the shop. Clara sat still for a long time, staring at her hands. Sam placed a hand on her shoulder. "We'll find help," he said. "There's nothing around," she whispered. "There's a town, 3 miles east. A doctor there. A real one. But how? The wagons. I'll carry her." Clara looked up at him. Sam was already rolling up his sleeves, eyes firm. "I'm not letting her die," he said. It took them 2 hours to reach the town. The rain had stopped, but the cold was worse. Clara walked fast beside Sam, who held Ruthie wrapped in blankets, her little body limp. Clara kept whispering to her, afraid to stop speaking, afraid silence meant the end. They reached the town just as the sun dipped behind the hills. It wasn't big, maybe 10 buildings and a barn, but it had a sign, Clearwater. They found the doctor, an older woman with gray hair and rough hands. She looked Ruthie over without asking many questions and got to work. She wouldn't let Clara or Sam in while she treated her. So they waited and waited. The doctor finally came out and sat down across from them. "She's not out of the woods," she said, "but she's strong. Fever broke just now." Clara collapsed forward, burying her face in her knees. Sam just bowed his head and rubbed the back of his neck, like he'd been holding his breath for hours. They were given a cot in the barn behind the doctor's house. The straw was clean, the blanket dry. Ruthie slept peacefully, her hand curled around Clara's finger. But Clara lay awake again, thinking of all that could have gone wrong. They had escaped Lyle. They had made it to Clearwater. But it wasn't over. Ruthie was still fragile. They had almost lost her again. And Clara couldn't shake the feeling that the past had followed them here, like a shadow. The next morning, the sheriff of Clearwater came knocking. Tall man, hard face, wore his badge like a threat. "You the ones from up near Morrow Creek?" he asked Sam. Sam nodded. "Got word from a man named Lyle," the sheriff continued. "Says a girl ran off with stolen goods. Claims she's not fit to care for the child." Clara's stomach turned to ice. Sam stepped forward. "That girl has done more to protect that child than anyone ever has." The sheriff looked at Clara. "That true?" She met his eyes. "I didn't steal anything. I begged. I cleaned boots. I did what I had to, but I never stole." He nodded slowly. "We'll look into it. You're safe here for now, but stay close and stay quiet." He walked off. Clara turned to Sam. "He won't stop, will he?" Sam's face was hard. "No, but he won't find her. Not this time." The days passed. Ruthie got stronger. She started eating again, even humming a little when she drew in the dirt. Clara got work sweeping the church steps. Sam found leather to fix and shoes to patch. The people in Clearwater weren't rich, but they gave what they could. Still, Clara didn't relax. Not when she heard a horse in the distance. Not when a stranger looked too long at Ruthie. She kept one hand near her coat pocket where she now kept a small pocket knife Sam had given her. And one night, she asked him the question that had been burning in her for weeks. "Why didn't you walk away?" He looked at her, quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Because I saw you fighting like hell for someone who needed you. And I know what it's like to wish someone had done the same for me." She swallowed. "Did they?" "No," he said. "They didn't." He stood up, walked to the doorway of the barn. "But that don't mean I can't be the one who stays this time." Clara looked over at Ruthie, asleep in the straw, her cheeks warm, breathing steady. Then she looked at Sam. And for the first time since her mama died, Clara allowed herself to feel it. Not safety, not peace, but the smallest flicker of something she'd almost forgotten. Trust. And maybe, just maybe, love. The morning fog hung low over Clearwater, thick and silver like spilled smoke. Clara stood outside the barn, arms folded tight, eyes locked on the eastern road. She'd been waking up earlier every day, as if instinct told her something was coming. Or someone. The letter had arrived 2 days ago. Slipped under the doctor's door, no name on it. Just her name, scrawled in thick ink across the front. Inside, the message was short. "She's not yours to keep. You don't get to run. I'm coming." No signature, but she didn't need one. It was Lyle. She knew it like she knew her own voice. She hadn't told Ruthie. Not yet. Not while her sister was still regaining color in her cheeks and sketching quiet dreams in the dirt. Clara hadn't even told Sam the truth of what the man had done. What he'd said to her once, cornered behind the saloon, when their mama was sick and Clara was only 10, carrying Ruthie on her hip. The day he grabbed her arm and whispered, "You'll be real useful one day." She had shoved his hand away and run, heart pounding. He'd laughed, and she'd buried it, deep, until now. Now he was coming, and if he found them, he wouldn't bring lawmen. He wouldn't bring papers. He'd bring threats, maybe a rope, maybe worse. He'd take Ruthie with lies and tricks, or cruelty, and claim she wasn't safe with Clara. And the worst part? Some men might believe him. Clara sat down on the steps of the barn and lowered her face into her hands. Her palms were rough, scarred, older than they should have been. Everything she'd done, the begging, the hiding, the boots she'd shined, and the people she'd begged not to look away, it all came to this. She had run, survived, but running didn't end things. Now she had to face it. "Clara." Ruthie's small voice carried from the barn's door. Clara looked up quickly, smiling the best she could. "You're up early." Ruthie padded across the hay barefoot and dropped beside her. She held something in her hand, one of her drawings. "A new one. This is you," Ruthie said, holding it up. The figure had long braids, like Clara used to wear, and wide arms circled around a smaller figure. The smile was big. The sun was shining above them. Clara swallowed the lump rising her throat. "That's a good one." Ruthie looked down. "Are we going to stay here?" "For good." Clara hesitated. "Because I like it here, Ruthie continued. I like the chickens and the doctor's cat, and how the church bell rings on Sundays. Claire smiled faintly. I know, baby. She didn't promise anything. Not because she didn't want to, but because she had made too many promises already. By the time Sam came back from the blacksmith shop that afternoon, Clara was in the woodshed behind the barn, hacking wood with a dull axe. Not for firewood. She just needed to hit something. He watched her for a moment before speaking. What happened? He asked quietly. Clara kept her back turned. Someone found us. Lyle. She nodded once, quick. He sent a letter. He's coming. Sam stepped inside the shed, ducking under the low beam. What do you want me to do? She turned toward him then, eyes glassy but fierce. Nothing. You already did more than you had to. This isn't your fight. Sam's jaw clenched. Yes, it is. I've been running from that man since I was 10, she said, voice hoarse. And I'm done running. If he wants to take Ruthie, he'll have to get through me. Sam nodded. Then he won't take her. Clara finally let herself breathe. Just a little. That night, she sat beside Ruthie's cot with her hand around Sam's. She told Ruthie a story their mama used to tell. About two sisters who climbed a mountain to find a star. And she didn't stop even when Ruthie fell asleep. The next morning, Lyle rode into Clearwater. He didn't come with guns. He came dressed like a proper man, vest buttoned, hair slicked, face shaved, but Clara knew better. He looked like a man who thought no one could touch him. He made his way straight to the sheriff's office. They watched from the alley behind the barn. Clara felt Sam tense beside her. Lyle came out an hour later, smug. By mid-afternoon, the sheriff was knocking at the barn again. Clara met him before he could speak. I know what he said, she said. But it's not true. The sheriff held up a hand. I didn't come to take her, but I do have to investigate. Lyle claims the child was left in your care without permission. He says he has paperwork. Says he knew your mother. He didn't, Clara spat. He waited till she was too sick to say no. That's all. The sheriff sighed. I've seen his kind, but law don't always move with truth. If you've got proof, any at all, now's the time. Clara opened her mouth, then closed it. She didn't. She had nothing but Ruthie's drawings and her own word. Give me till tomorrow, she whispered. I'll fix this. The sheriff nodded once. But make sure he doesn't catch you alone. That evening, Clara sat under the trees at the edge of town, staring at the dark. She couldn't run again. Not now. Not when Ruthie had finally started smiling in her sleep. Not when she'd begun to believe they could belong somewhere. So Clara did what she hadn't done in years. She went back to the church. The preacher was there, sweeping the floor. Do you remember my mama? Clara asked softly. He looked up, startled. He studied her face for a moment. Yeah, I remember. Kind woman. Kept to herself. She died sick. With no one. And that man who's here now, Lyle, he waited for her to get too weak to fight back. He tried to take Ruthie. The preacher's eyes narrowed. You need a witness? She nodded. I'll speak to the sheriff in the morning, he said. I saw your mama. I knew her. I'll say what I know. Clara felt her knees weaken. She barely said thank you. Later that night, Sam came to her with something in his hand. A small, folded paper. What's that? I wrote up a statement, he said, telling what I know, how I met you, what I saw, that you kept Ruthie alive with nothing but grit and spit. Clara took it and ran her fingers over the creases. You believe me. Sam looked her square in the eye. You saved her life. And mine. She didn't ask what he meant. She just leaned forward and hugged him, tight and long. And he held her like he never wanted to let go. The next morning, Clara stood in front of the sheriff's office, shoulders straight, Ruthie's drawing clutched in one hand. The preacher was beside her. Sam, too. Lyle waited inside, hat resting on his knee, smug as ever. Clara walked in like she'd lived there her whole life. You don't have to scare me anymore, she said. He sneered. You think a child belongs with a gutter rat like you? You've been lying since the day you were born. The sheriff held up a hand. Enough. I got a statement here. From a preacher, from a business owner, and from a doctor, all saying Ruthie's safe, cared for, and better than she's ever been. Lyle's face twisted. I also have witnesses saying you harassed a sick woman, threatened her daughters, and try to claim the child without papers. Which means you can either walk away, or I start asking questions that won't go in your favor. Clara stepped forward. She's mine. Maybe not by blood. Maybe not on paper. But I held her every night she cried. I fed her when no one else would. I carried her when her legs couldn't. That's what makes a family. Lyle stood. You think I'm scared of you? No, Clara said. I think you're scared of the truth. He took a step toward her, then Sam stepped in. Not with fists, just presence. Just that same steady strength Clara had leaned on for weeks. Lyle hesitated. The sheriff stood too. You should go. And this time he did. Clara didn't cry until they were home. She sat in the barn and let the tears come. For her mama. For the fear. For everything she'd carried alone for far too long. Sam sat beside her, silent. And when she finally spoke, it was only this. We're staying. Sam nodded. Good. Later, Ruthie ran into her arms, clutching a new drawing. This one had 3 people. A house. A tree with red apples. Clara laughed, the sound catching in her throat. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were starting to live. The frost broke that week. The early mornings in Clearwater were still cold, but the edge was gone from the wind. Sunlight lingered longer on the fields, warming fence rails and the backs of horses left tied outside the saloon. The doctor no longer checked Ruthie twice a day, just once in the morning now, with a tired smile and a gentle pat on her small shoulder. Ruthie was herself again. Her laugh came back first, short and breathy like she'd forgotten how to do it. Then the color returned to her cheeks. And by the end of the week, she was helping the preacher plant new flower beds outside the church, barefoot in the dirt, humming as she worked. Clara watched her from a bench nearby, her hands wrapped around a warm mug Sam had brought her that morning. She still hadn't said much since the confrontation with Lyle. She was waiting for it to all collapse again, out of habit, waiting for the next blow. But it hadn't come. Lyle was gone. The sheriff said he left town before dawn, bitter and quiet, like a man who knew the tide had turned against him. Word had spread. The town knew now who Clara was. But instead of turning away, they had turned toward her, softly, carefully. Mrs. Dale from the Mercantile offered her a part-time job sweeping floors and helping count stock. The doctor asked if she'd be willing to learn more, maybe train to assist. Even the preacher gave Ruthie a slate and chalk, saying, she's a little behind, but not too far to catch up. Clara had been alone for so long that the quiet of safety felt foreign. Her body still flinched at shadows. But each time, she remembered, they weren't running anymore. One evening, Sam knocked on the barn door and stepped inside with something in his arms. A gift, he said. He handed Clara a box. Inside it was a pair of small leather shoes, Ruthie's size. Stitched carefully. Sam's work. Clara blinked hard. You didn't have to. I know, he said, but I wanted to. She deserves shoes that fit. Clara ran her fingers along the stitches, quiet. She asked me today if we're ever going to have a real home, she whispered. Not a barn or alley or borrowed floor. A place that's ours. Sam crouched beside her, slow and steady. And what did you say? I didn't know how to answer. Sam looked her in the eye, and for a long time, neither of them said anything. Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I've been saving, he said, every bit I earned since I got here. I didn't know why at first, just couldn't spend it. But now I do. He handed it to her. It was a deed to a small cabin just outside Clearwater. Nothing fancy, 2 rooms, some land, a barn that needed fixing. The price scribbled on it wasn't high, but it might as well have been a kingdom. Clara stared at him. I want to give it to you, he said. Her voice caught. Why? Sam gave a small smile. Because I love you. The words were simple, but they landed in her chest like a sunrise after 1,000 nights. I love you, he repeated. I didn't know what it meant before, but I know now. It means giving you something no one ever gave me. Safety. Choice. A place. Clara covered her mouth. She hadn't cried since the night Ruthie's fever broke. But now she couldn't stop the tears. They weren't heavy or panicked. Just slow, quiet. The kind that came when you finally stopped holding everything in. She reached for Sam's hand, and held it like it was a lifeline. "You sure?" she whispered. He nodded. "Every morning I see you, I'm sure." Clara laughed through her tears. Then yes. Yes, let's make it ours. That weekend, the town helped move them. The preacher lent a wagon. The doctor brought dried herbs. Mrs. Dale sent along canned peaches. Ruthie danced through the dirt path like she'd found a fairy tale. The cabin was old but sturdy. Sam patched the roof. Clara scrubbed the floor. Ruthie painted flowers on the shutters with mud and leftover chalk. They planted seeds in the back, not just because it was practical, but because it meant they planned to be there long enough to watch something grow. One afternoon, as the sky turned gold and wind rustled through the dry grass, Ruthie placed her hand in Clara's. "Are we safe now?" she asked. Clara looked around, at the cabin, the garden, the long stretch of sky, and Sam, stacking wood with his sleeves rolled up, humming to himself. She bent down and brushed a loose strand of hair from Ruthie's face. "Yes," she said, "we're safe." And for the first time in her life, she believed it. They still had hard days. Ruthie caught colds. The stove broke once in the middle of the night. Money ran low in winter. But they faced it all together. Clara sometimes dreamed of the alley, the cold, her mother's hands, Lyle's voice. But those memories no longer ruled her. They were part of her, but not all of her. She had built something now, brick by brick, kindness by kindness. A life, a family. And when spring came, with wildflowers blooming and the ground soft again, Ruthie stood barefoot in the garden and pointed toward the sky. "Look," she said, "the first star." Clara followed her gaze, then reached down, took Ruthie's hand in one and Sam's in the other. And together, they stood under the sky, no longer running, just living.